Welcome dear students to the course of network security. Today topic is digital signature. The roadmap for today's presentation is that we are going to start this lecture with a brief background about signature and how we use them, for what purpose we use them. Then we will move towards the definition of a digital signature, their different properties as well as requirements for digital signature. First, let us see how and where we use a signature. Tell me how much time you have used your signature on a piece of paper during the last week. For example, you have written an application and then you sign that application. You submit a proposal, you submit a thesis, a legal document, you write something in your diary, you write a report, even you sign a check to withdraw money from the bank, and so on. So there are plenty of different occasions in which we can actually use our signature, and your signature is actually the fact that you have acknowledged or you agreed with the contents of a document. Uh, in in other sense, it is like we use our signature for authenticity of many legal or financial or other type of document, and that is determined by the presence or sometime by the absence of a handwritten signature. Generally, the signature, our handwritten signature, has certain properties. Some of these properties are mentioned here, like the signature must be authentic. That is the first property of the signature. What does it mean? It means that the signer, the person who actually signed the document, deliberately did this action. Just in the same sense as we do message authentication or authentication of a user, the concept is same. Signature is authentic mean that the person or the signer deliberately signed the document. The second property is that signature are not reusable. Not reusable in the sense that the signature is part of the document. A person cannot move the signature to a different document for authentication purposes. For example, you have put your signature on the document A, then you cannot move the signature from document A to document B in order to validate that document B has been signed by the same person. Or to make it simple, you cannot uh, copy paste, for example, the signature from one document to another signature. Although that is possible, but that is not legal. Another property is that signature are unalterable. After the document has been signed, it cannot be altered, and that is why when you do some correction in a signed document, then you have to sign at the location where you actually make the correction, because it has a property that signatures are unalterable. And also the signature cannot be repudiated. That is, the signer, the person who actually signed the document, cannot later claim that he or she didn't sign the document. You cannot deny that you did not sign the document. So these were some properties of a signature. However, in reality, none of these statements about signature is completely true. Signature can be forked, signature can be lifted from one piece of paper and could be moved to another piece of paper or document. It could be altered and things like that. Even documents can be changed without signatures. Okay. Now let us move toward digital signature, which actually is a cryptographic technique. And this technique is used to achieve the mentioned goals or the properties that we just studied about signature in the digital world, in the cryptographic world, digital signatures serve to achieve those goals. You can say it is an analogy for handwritten signature, and it is one of the most important and most practical use of modern day cryptography. You can say it is like the killer application of the cryptography. To be more technical, a digital signature is a protocol that produces the same effect as a real signature. Or you can say that a digital signature is like a mark that only the sender can make, but the other people can easily recognize as belonging to the sender. Like you see a document, you see that signature, and then you recognize that who actually is the sender of that document. So in a similar way, in the digital world, the digital signature is a protocol, or you can say is like a mark that only sender can make, but other people can easily recognize, or other machine can easily recognize it. And just with the handwritten signature, digital signature should be done in a way that is verifiable and that is non-forgettable. You would be able to verify the digital signature at the receiver end, and nobody can deny later on that he or she doesn't sign the document. And also, it must be possible to prove that a document signed by an individual was indeed signed by that individual. Means the signature must be verifiable. And also, only the individual could have signed the document, which means the signature cannot be forged by other persons. So a digital signature scheme actually is composed of three different algorithms, and some of the components are also mentioned in this diagram. The three components are uh, the key generation, signing algorithm, and signature verification algorithm. First, let us see the digital signature, how it works. We will come back to this topic later on in this presentation. But first, let us have a quick overview of this diagram as well. We have a sender Alice and we have a receiver Bob. Alice wants to send a message, "Hello Bob," towards the receiver. But before going to send that message, Alice actually signed this document or this message. For doing so, Alice must have to use the private key. We will discuss it in a moment. And then this is actually the signature, digital signature that we put on this document. Later on, when the message arrives at the receiver responsibility is to verify the document, and the receiver can do it by applying the Alice public key. So with the help of Alice public key, the receiver can actually verify whether the contents of the message are authentic or not. If something goes wrong to the message during transmission, then the receiver would not be able to derive this text. Okay, so we will discuss it in more details in the coming slides. So first, let us see the components of a digital signature. There are basically three different components of a digital signature. The first component is the key generation. A key generation is like an algorithm which select a private key, remember, okay? In cryptography, we were talking about the public keys for encryption, while here we are talking about the private key. And this private key, in case of digital signature, must be generated by the key generation algorithm at random. And then the algorithm actually, the key generation algorithm actually outputs the private key and a corresponding public key, like a pair of the keys. It is the responsibility of the key generation algorithm to produce two different keys, a public key and a private key, but they must be mathematically linked with one another. The second component is the signing algorithm. As the name indicate, it is an algorithm which is responsible to produce a signature on the document. And the input to this signing algorithm is the message that we want to protect and a private key that is generated by the key generation algorithm. And the output is a digital signature. And then at the receiver side, we need the third component that is known as the signature verifying algorithm. And it will take as an input the actual message sent by the sender and the public key. Remember, public key. The private key is used for signing algorithm with the signing algorithm, and the public key is going or is used in the signature verifying algorithm. And then based on the comparison, the receiver actually either accept the message or reject the message. If they are the same, then the message will be accepted. Otherwise, the message must be rejected. And here is the whole process depicted with the help of a diagram. We have a sender and we have a receiver. The sender wants to send a message toward the receiver. So here we have the message. The first thing is to use the digital signature or the signing algorithm or the digital signature creation. What it will do, it will actually generate a digital signature, but it needs two things. One thing is the message itself, second thing is the key. For digital signature, the sender has to use the private key. Okay, and this key must be generated by an algorithm. That is the first component. So the key is generated by this algorithm, and then we supply it to this digital signature. I think the arrows should be like this. We supply the private key to this algorithm which actually creates the signature, digital signature. And then on the receiver side, what we need two things: the sender public key as well as the third component, that is the signature verification algorithm. So we have the digital signature verification mechanism scheme algorithm here, and also the sender public key. If after applying this key and this algorithm on the received document, if the signature matches, if they are the same, then the document will be accepted. Otherwise, if they are not the same, it indicates that something goes wrong with the message. Okay, now digital signature. Let me give you a background first. As we know that with public key cryptography, a user has both the public and private key, and both of these key are unique to that user and they are related with one another. That is what we have studied in the public key cryptography. So keeping this in mind, this property of the public key cryptography, we can say that public key cryptography is an excellent candidate for the digital signature mechanism. In simple word, we can use public key cryptography for digital signatures. And we need to make a distinguish between the private and public keys that are used in the digital signature and that are used in the cryptography. The keys are same, public and private, but how they are used, there is different. If you remember, in cryptography, the public and private keys of the receiver are used in the process. This is something very important. In cryptography, we use the public key and the private key of the receiver. The sender uses the public key of the receiver to encrypt the message, and the receiver uses his or her own private key to decrypt the message. This is what happens in cryptography. While on the other side, in digital signature, the private and public keys of the sender are used. How they are used? Actually, the sender uses his or her private key and the receiver use the sender's public key. Okay, so here the concept is opposite. We use the public and private key of the sender. So in a digital signature, the signer or the person who actually signed the document uses his or her private key to sign the document, and the verifier or the receiver on the other hand uses the public key of the signer or the sender to verify the document. And once a document is signed by using the digital signature algorithm, anyone including Bob can verify it. Why? Because everyone has access to the signer public key. Because public key need to be public, need to be shared with the public. So everyone who has access to the public key of that person can actually access or can actually read that message. Okay. Now, the sender, for example, Alice, must not use her public key to sign the document. Why? As we just say that the sender has to use the private key for signing the document, not the public key. Why? Why we are not using the public key to sign the document? Because if we do that, anyone could be able to forge the signature. Now, let me ask you a question. Can we use a secret key, symmetric key, cryptography in this case to sign and verify a signature? Or can we use symmetric key, cryptography for digital signature? The answer is like a noise. Noise means either yes or no for several reasons. Means you can use it, but on the other side you cannot use it. It's like an opponent question. Why? Because a secret key is known by only two entities, for example, Alice and Bob. So if Alice needs to sign another document to send to someone else, for example, TD, then in this case, Alice would need to use another secret key with TD. And then, for example, with date, she would need to use another secret key. If she want to communicate with 1,000 different persons, then she would need to use 1,000 different keys. That is a problem. Second reason is that, for example, Alice is communicating with Bob, then Bob could not use the secret key between himself and Alice to sign a document. Okay, let me rephrase what I said. Actually, this point is against the use of symmetric key cryptography for digital signature, and here is the problem. For example, Alice and Bob communicated with one another by using a secret key, or in order to sign a document they have a shared secret, a shared key. Then there is a possibility that either Bob or Alice could use the same key to sign a document and send it to a third party, and then the sender will pretend that the message has actually come from someone else. For example, let us take three three parties, and the three parties are A, B, and C. So A and B communicate with one another by using a secret key. Then there are chances that B could use this opportunity to communicate with the third party, for example C, and the B will pretend that it is actually A. He will try to convince the C that C is actually communicating with A and not with B. So there are possibilities. So due to these circumstances, due to these reasons, we do not prefer to use the private key cryptography, the public key or symmetric key cryptography. Sorry, the private key or symmetric key cryptography for the use of digital signature. We try to avoid it. Okay. Some more points about digital signature are mentioned on this slide. We will discuss this slide in detail when we discuss about the properties of digital signature, but they are simple. The receiver must be able to verify the identity of the sender with the help of digital signature. And the second one is that the sender cannot actually deny that he or she didn't send the message, and also the receiver cannot possibly have concocted the message himself. We will see this property in the digital signature properties when we study it there. Okay, so this slide I talk about why we do not use private key cryptography. I think it's private key, not the public key. Okay, this is about the discussion that we had just now. Okay, why we actually use public key, why we do not prefer to use private key cryptography or symmetric key cryptography, and as I just mentioned the reasons. So that is why we prefer to use public key, and how it works. We have to use the private key at the sender side of the sender and the public key at the receiver side of the sender. These two keys are used for digital signature. Now let us see diagrammatically how actually things work. And this figure is a generic model of the process of making and also using digital signature. We have Bob on the left hand side and Alice on the right hand side. Bob can sign a message, and the message has been represented by M here. Bob can sign this message by using a digital signature generation algorithm. Remember, there are three components. Component number 1, component number 2, and component number 3. We need a key generation algorithm, we need a signature generation algorithm, and we need a signature verification algorithm. So the process starts like this. Bob has a message to send towards Alice. He would, for example, the message is represented by M. Bob can sign a message by using the digital signature generation algorithm. However, this algorithm requires two things. The first thing is the message itself, and the second thing is the Bob private key. These two are the input to this digital signature generation algorithm. Now, any other user, for example, Alice, can verify this signature by using two things: a verification algorithm, that is the third component, and the input to this signature verification algorithm are mentioned here. First input is the Bob public key. So you see, we are actually using the sender private key and sender public key. So Alice, who is actually the receiver, once she receives the message along with the signature, she will be using this algorithm for verification. And this algorithm requires two things as an input. The first thing is the Bob public key, and the second thing is the message and the signature. You see, the message comes to this algorithm as well as the signature come to this algorithm. So actually is like the message along with the signature and the Bob's public key that are provided as an input to this verification algorithm. And then if the result, if the output of this digital signature verification algorithm is what we use to take our decision whether the message has been intact, nothing wrong goes to the message, or something change the bits of this message. If that happens, then we will get a different signature, and if the signature is different, it means something goes wrong to the message. If we go into further details, so here is another look at the digital signature process. We do have Bob and Alice here. We do have the Bob private key and Bob public key. We do have the the algorithm for creation and the algorithm for verification. However, here we are not actually considering the message in plain text. If you see here, the message is taken as a plain text. Here, first we convert the message into a hash value. Remember, this is the concept from the previous week. Hash function, we apply it on the message to create a fixed length value which is known as digest, message digest, hash value, code, etc. So this is actually the hash. And now we are like applying double check on the data. First, in the first scenario, we apply the process on the message in plain text. Now we are going to apply the process, or we are going to sign the hash of the message, not the message itself. So we are using Bob private key along with the hash, which are provided as an input to this algorithm, and then it will actually generate a signature, and this signature belongs to Bob. At the receiver side, the process is same but in opposite or in reverse direction. We receive the message and we receive the signature. The message will goes through the hash function. Okay, a hash will be generated, and then we need to generate the H naught, which is generated by providing two things: the signature along with the Bob public key. These two are provided as an input to the verification algorithm, and after that, remember, two checks, one check, two checks. So one check has been applied. Now it's time to check the second one. It is H and H naught. Compare the two hashes. If they are the same, okay, the message is intact. If the hashes are different, then it means that the message is not valid, something goes wrong. This is at an advanced level of the digital signature, in which instead of signing the message, we actually sign the hash of the message. That is the simplest form. Now let us see some properties of the digital signature, and this is very simple. As we saw properties of the handwritten signature, so we actually have properties of the digital signature as well. The message authentication protect two properties, or you can say two communicating entities or two parties who exchange messages from the third party, which could be a intruder, which could be intruder, which could be a hacker, trudy, bad guy, etc. So message authentication actually protect the two parties, for example Alice and Bob, who actually are exchanging messages from the third party, from the dirty guy. That is the message authentication. However, it does not protect the two parties against each other. Message authentication is possible, but it does not protect the two parties against each other. How? Several forms of dispute between these two are possible. For example, suppose we have two parties, A and B. A sends an authenticated message towards B. Now what will happen? Consider a scenario. For example, as I just say, we have two communicating parties, A and B, and A is sending a message towards B. Now this B may forward a different message. Let's suppose the message sent here is M. The B will consider another message B dash. So this is a different message, but the B can claim that actually this message came from A. How? B would simply have to create a message M0 and then append an authentication code, for example S, digital signature. How? Because we need a key, and that key is the public key, and public key is available to the whole world. So B will use the public key of A to make the claim that actually M0 has been received from A. But that is not the case. M0 was generated by B. It was not received from A. But A's, they have a key, public key, which is available to any person, so he could actually use this authentication code to make fork a different message. Let me give you another example. For example, you want to transfer some electronic funds, and the transfer takes place from A to B. The receiver actually increases the amount of the fund transfer and claim that the larger amount has arrived from the sender. So in this case, the receiver is actually forwarding a message, claiming a different message, and then try to prove that it is actually arrived from A, but that is not arrived from A. Another problem is like this. A can actually deny sending the message because it is possible for B to forward a message. Then there is no way to prove that A did in fact send the message. Now this is from the other side. A can deny a message. I didn't send this M. Maybe B has generated this M on his own. So B can deny this message as well. An example of this scenario could be, for example, an electronic mail message contains instruction of a transaction that subsequently happened, and the sender pretend that he or she didn't perform this transaction. So in this case, we have to resolve this issue. So digital signature properties, coming back to it. Actually, in situation where there is not a complete trust between A and B, or between sender and receiver, something more than authentication is needed. The most attractive solution to this problem is the digital signature. But whenever you want to use digital signature, it must have to satisfy these properties. What are these properties? It must verify the author, okay, the sender, and along with additional information like when was the document signed, at which time, on which date, things like that. And also it must authenticate the contents of the message, the contents at the time at which the document was signed. And also the signature must be verifiable by third parties in cases of conflicts. If A try to prove that he does not send the message, or if B try to forward another message and then claim that it has been arrived from A, how we will actually resolve these issues, this conflict? So it must be a property of the digital signature. Finally, let us see some requirements for the digital signature, and this is also simple. On the basis of the properties, we can formulate some requirements for a digital signature, like the digital signature must be a bit pattern. Sorry. It's like a bit pattern that can depend on the message being signed. Means the digital signature has a closed link with the message. You cannot separate it from that message, or you cannot change it, or even you cannot change the message itself. So there is a dependency, a relationship between the signature and the message or the document. Another property is that the signature must use some useful information, or you can say that the signature use some information that must be unique to the sender. Like the signature is unique to that sender, and it will actually enable the other party to make sure that message forgery is not allowed. And also, as we saw with the hash function, it must be relatively easy to produce a digital signature. So the process must be easy for the creation of the digital signature, and also for the verification of the digital signature, the process must be simple, feasible. It does not require too many computational resources, too many power, too many processing power, storage, etc. So it must be computationally feasible in term of production as well as verification in both cases. And also it must be computationally infeasible to forge a digital signature, or you can say to make a copy of a digital signature, either by constructing like a new message and then claiming that it has been arrived from A. Actually, it does not arrive from A. So that is going to be computationally infeasible. And also retain a copy of the digital signature for future use, or in case if some conflict arrives, then you must need to have a copy of the signature that has been generated or that has been given to you. So these are some requirements for the digital signature, and with these words I'm going to stop this lecture here. In the next lecture we are going to talk about digital certificates or public key certificate. That is going to be a small lecture. So stay tuned and take care. Goodbye.